3,000 witnesses, one mistake, and the man who made it didn't know he'd already lost. The bell had barely stopped ringing when the room changed temperature, not from the bodies, from the disrespect. I was sitting ringside at the Harlem Armory on 142nd, front row, center seat, not because I liked boxing, because when something happens in my neighborhood, it happens in front of me. The air was thick enough to chew. Sweat, cigar smoke, cheap whiskey, and the metallic smell that floats when a man's blood hits canvas. The crowd was restless. Some came for sport, some came for gambling. Most came because Saturday night in Harlem feels safer when I'm in the building. To my left, June Bug didn't blink. He never watched the fight. He watched hands, waistbands, eyes. To my right, a city councilman laughed too hard at everything I said. His palms were wet. They usually are when a man owes you favors he can't repay. In the ring, a local boy was down, flat on his back, out cold. The other fighter stood over him like he'd conquered Rome. Billy Brangan, big, pale, built like a brick wall that learned how to punch, came up from downtown, talked loud all week, called Harlem weak, said he was going to clean it up. He knocked our boy out with one cross. Clean, brutal, efficient. The referee waved it off. Half the crowd booed, the other half counted their betting slips. Billy didn't care. He climbed the ropes and screamed at the people who paid to see him, fed off their anger like it was oxygen. The promoter hustled over to me. Nervous little man. Smile stretched thin. "Mr. Johnson," he said, "would you do the honor?" Adjusted my tie, buttoned my jacket. Of course I would. You don't throw an event in Harlem without me blessing it. That's not ego, that's order. When I stepped into that ring, the noise shifted, not louder, deeper, like thunder rolling under the floorboards. People started chanting my name, not because they loved me, because they understood something Billy didn't: ownership. I walked toward him with the belt in my hands, polite face, steady eyes. "Congratulations," I said, calm, even. "You fought hard." He didn't take the belt. He looked at me like I was interrupting his spotlight. "I don't need that junk," he said into the microphone. The armory went quiet, not booing, not cheering, listening. "It's tradition," I told him. "Take it." He leaned closer, sweat dripping, breath hot with arrogance. "You think you run this place," he said. "You're just a suit with stories." There it was, power imbalance. He thought muscles meant control, thought fists were the same thing as authority. I held the belt steady. "In Harlem," I said softly, "we value respect." He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the split in his gum. "Make me?" he whispered. Then he spit, not accidental, deliberate. Blood and saliva hit the lapel of my suit. 3,000 people stopped breathing at the same time. June Bug was already moving, razor flashing under the lights. Two of my men vaulting the barrier. Billy didn't see it. He was still grinning, still performing. I raised one hand. "Stand down." That's all it took. The razor froze inches from skin. I looked down at my jacket. White silk handkerchief out. Wiped the stain slow, folded it, dropped it at his feet. No anger, no shouting, just memory. He mistook silence for weakness. "Go back to wherever you came from," he laughed. I looked at him for 3 seconds, not as a fighter, as a problem. Then I turned and walked out of the ring. The crowd parted without being told. Whispers following me down the aisle. Why didn't he react? Is he slipping? Did the boxer just win twice? Let them wonder. Outside, the November air was cold, clean, quiet. I got into the back of my Cadillac. June Bug slammed the front door harder than necessary. "Boss," he said, voice shaking, "we can't let that stand." I lit a cigar. Watch the flame glow against the glass. "The ring," I said, "has ropes, referees, rules." Smoke curled toward the ceiling. "The world doesn't." June Bug turned slightly. "You want his hands?" "No." "His legs?" "No." He waited. I exhaled slow. "I want his future." Silence filled the car as we drove. He didn't understand yet. That's fine. That's why I'm the one making decisions. Billy thought he embarrassed me in front of Harlem. What he didn't understand was this. He just handed me permission. And by morning, he wouldn't be a champion. He wouldn't even be a contender. He'd be something worse. Forgot. And somewhere across the city, Billy Brangan was raising champagne glasses, laughing about the old man he humiliated. He didn't know the phone calls had already begun. He didn't know the floor beneath his feet had started to move, and he definitely didn't know. He wasn't the hunter anymore. Billy woke up thinking he was famous. By noon, he was invisible. The headache hit first. Champagne and ego don't mix well. He rolled over in a cheap Hell's Kitchen motel room, sunlight cutting across his face like an interrogation lamp. He smiled to himself. He remembered the knockout, the booze, the spit, especially the spit. He laughed. "Old man didn't do a thing," he muttered. That was his first mistake of the day. He reached for the phone to order breakfast. Steak. Eggs, something heavy. The line was dead. He tapped the receiver. Nothing. He dressed fast, jeans, tight shirt. The kind that reminds people you're dangerous. Downstairs, the desk clerk wouldn't look at him. "My phone's out," Billy said. "It's not broken," the kid replied. "Service was cut." Billy frowned. "I paid." "Manager said you gotta leave." The paper slid across the counter. "Paid in full." Red ink at the bottom, "Out now." Billy leaned forward, shoulders flexed, voice low. "You know who I am?" The kid nodded. "Yeah," he said quietly, "I do." No fear in his eyes, no admiration either, just distance. "If you're not out by noon, police are coming, and the ice company's already canceled deliveries." Billy blinked. "What's ice got to do with me?" "Owner says if you stay, ice stops, linen stops. We can't run without supply." Supply? Billy didn't understand the word yet. He stormed outside to his red convertible. Beautiful car. Bought on credit. Thought the purse from last night would make the payments easy. He turned the key. Click again. Click. He popped the hood. Battery cable cleanly removed. No damage, no mess, just absence. He looked up and down the street. Nobody watching him, which was worse. He walked to the corner and flagged a cab. Driver pulled over. Billy got in. 54th and Broadway, he said. Goldman's office. The driver checked the mirror. Recognition flashed, then something colder. "Get out." Billy leaned forward. "What?" "I ain't taking you. You want your teeth in the trunk." The driver didn't flinch. "Dispatch said no pickups for you. Anybody gives you a ride loses their medallion." Billy stared. The driver turned fully around now. "I got 3 kids," he said. "You ain't worth it." That's when the cold started creeping in. Not fear, confusion. Billy stepped out. The cab drove off like he was already gone, 20 blocks to his manager's office. He walked fast, shoulders tight, eyes scanning. People recognized him, but they didn't react the way they did yesterday. No autographs, no insults, no cheers, just watching like he had something contagious. He burst into the office. "Morty," he shouted, "where's my money?" The reception desk was empty, boxes stacked along the wall. Morty Goldman was packing up his framed photos. "You shouldn't be here," Morty said. "Where's my purse?" "There isn't one." Billy laughed. "Don't joke." The commission froze it. "For what?" "Investigation. Betting irregularities." Billy's face tightened. "I won clean." Morty shook his head slowly. "And Philly S canceled." "What?" "Venue pulled out. Said they got electrical problems." "Electrical problems?" Billy stepped closer. "What's really happening?" Morty looked at him like a man looking at a sinking boat he already swam away from. "Do you know who you spit on?" Billy rolled his eyes. "Some Harlem relic." Morty let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "That relic runs unions, runs numbers, runs half the permits in this city." Billy's jaw flexed. "I don't care." "You should." Morty closed his box. "I got a call this morning. If I keep representing you, none of my other fighters get licensed in New York, Jersey, or Pennsylvania." Billy went still. "You're my manager." "I have 12 other fighters." So I choose the 12. Silence. "You're dropping me." "I already did." Billy's breathing got heavier now. "You can't freeze me out." Morty looked him dead in the eye. "Look around." The phones weren't ringing. The receptionist wasn't there. The office was already half empty. "You're radioactive," Morty said, "and I don't glow for anybody." Billy stood there alone. By the time he left the building, the air felt thinner. He headed to his gym on 125th. That place was his sanctuary. Heavy bags, sweat, familiar faces. The metal gate was down. Big padlock through the bars, sign taped to it, closed. He rattled the gate hard. Open up, it's Billy. Nothing, he kicked it. Metal rang out down the block, still nothing. That's when the noise inside his head got loud. Motel, cab, manager, gym. Coincidences don't stack that clean. He walked to a payphone, called Jersey, called the people he thought were tougher than Harlem politics, put Tony on. Silence, then a new voice. "Kid," it said quietly, "Tony says he don't know you." Billy swallowed. "Tell him it's important. He said if you call again, he's gonna send someone to break your jaw." Click, the receiver swung. Billy stood there staring at the street. Now the paranoia crept in. Every slowing car looked suspicious. Every man leaning against a storefront looked informed. He walked into a diner, sat at the counter. Burger, coffee. The waitress looked at the cook. The cook shook his head. "Grill's down," she said. "I see burgers." "Not for you." He slapped a 10 on the counter. "Money's money." She slid it back. "Not here." He felt it then, not anger. Isolation, the kind that tightens your chest. He stepped outside. Sun was dropping, shadows stretching longer. And somewhere across Harlem I was sitting behind my desk untouched. Every call placed, every favor collected, every lever pulled. Billy thought power was loud, but the loudest thing in the world is silence, and right now his phone wasn't ringing. His car wouldn't start. His manager vanished. His gym locked. Even his enemies pretended not to know him. He wasn't being hunted. He was being erased. By the time the sun finished setting, Billy understood one thing. If he didn't fix this, he wouldn't eat, and hunger makes proud men crawl. But what he didn't know yet was that crawling was exactly what I was waiting for. By dusk, Billy wasn't angry anymore. He was calculating. Pride feeds a man for a night. Hunger teaches him math. He stood on 125th Street staring at faces that refused to see him. The neighborhood moved around him like he was a shadow. No eye contact, no greetings, no hostility either, worse than hate, indifference. He finally said the word out loud. Bumpy. That name carried weight here. It moved trucks, it moved ballots, it moved silence. Billy wiped his face and started walking south. No cab would stop. No bus driver slowed down. He walked block after block, the city stretching longer than it ever had. 40 blocks later, his shoulders sagged. The Palmetto storefront didn't look like power. That was the point. Plain windows, modest sign, clean glass. Real power doesn't advertise. He knocked hard. Nothing. Knocked again. "Mr. Johnson." He called. "We need to talk." The door opened just enough for Junebug to fill the frame. No weapon in sight. Didn't need one. "He's expecting you," Junebug said. That sentence hit Billy harder than any punch he'd thrown. Inside, the office was quiet, orderly, oak desk, rotary phone. Ledger closed neatly at the corner. I was reading the paper, fresh navy suit, clean lines, no stain on this one. Billy stood in front of the desk, breathing uneven. "I came to apologize," he said. "I didn't look up." "For what?" "For last night." Silence. "You'll have to be specific," I said calmly. "You did several foolish things." He swallowed. "I was hyped up. I didn't mean it." I folded the paper, set it down. "You didn't mean to gather spit in your mouth and aim it." He looked at the floor. "I was stupid." "That's accurate." His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Progress. "I can't get a fight," he said. "My purse is frozen. My gym's locked. Nobody'll drive me. Nobody'll feed me." He stepped closer to the desk. "Call them off." I leaned back. "You are finding the city uncomfortable." "Yes." "That's interesting." His breathing got heavier. "I'm a fighter, that's all I know." "Then you should have known when to keep your mouth closed." He flinched. For the first time since he walked in, his size didn't matter. He lowered himself slowly to his knees. Big man, heavyweight on hardwood floors. "I'll do anything," he said. "I'll give you my purse. I'll fight for free, just let me back in." Junebug shifted slightly by the door. I stood, walked around the desk. Billy looked up at me like a man looking up from the bottom of a well. "You think this is about money?" I asked. He didn't answer. "You think you embarrassed me?" "Silent, you embarrassed yourself." I stepped closer. "You have fists, that's violence. Violence is cheap. Any man with anger can throw a punch." I tapped my temple. "This is something else." He was shaking now. "I could have let him cut you in that ring," I said softly. "Right there, bright lights, big audience." Billy's eyes flicked toward Junebug. "But that would have made you a martyr. Headlines, sympathy, ticket sales." I shook my head. "No, I wanted you to feel small." His pride cracked right there. I saw it. "Please," he whispered. There it was, the sound of a man understanding hierarchy. "You are alive," I continued, "which means this is mercy." His head lifted slightly, hope flickered. "I will make one call," I said. Hope grew. "To the bus station." It died instantly. "You have family in Ohio, don't you?" He stared at me. "Ohio," he said. "What about my career?" "Your career ended when you confused attention with authority." His breathing got shallow. "You leave tonight," I said. "You do not fight on this coast again. You do not say my name in public. If I see your name on a card, if I hear you're training within 100 miles of this city." I glanced at Junebug. He smiled, slow, patient. "Then I won't stop him next time." Billy nodded quickly. "I understand." "Say it clearly." "I understand." "Good." Junebug stepped forward. "I'll take him to Port Authority," he said. Billy stood up slowly. Shoulders collapsed inward, the swagger gone. As he reached the door, he paused. "Why didn't you just kill me?" he asked. I looked at him carefully. "Because men forget gunshots," I said. "They don't forget hunger." He didn't have a response for that. He left with Junebug. The door closed. The office went quiet again. A few minutes later, my wife stepped out from the back room. She'd heard enough. "You showed him mercy," she said softly. "Did I?" I walked to the window. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. "Yesterday he was a king," I said. "Tomorrow he'll be another man punching a clock somewhere he never planned to live." She rested her hand on my shoulder. "And that satisfies you?" I watched Junebug guide the broken giant into the car. "It teaches the lesson," I said, "and lessons travel further than bullets. But here's the part nobody talks about. Humiliation doesn't disappear, it ferments. A man stripped of everything has two choices: disappear quietly or come back desperate. And desperation is unpredictable." As Junebug's car pulled away toward the bus station, I had a feeling. This story wasn't finished, because sometimes the men you erase try to write themselves back in blood. Junebug didn't come back alone. That's how I knew the lesson hadn't settled the way I intended. It was past midnight when the office phone rang. Not the front line, the private one. The number only a handful of men had. I let it ring twice, picked up on the third. "Yeah." Junebug's voice was steady, but there was movement behind it. Street noise, raised voices. He didn't get on the bus. I didn't speak. He waited till the last call, Junebug continued. Then he walked off the platform, said he needed air. And he disappeared into the crowd. Now I leaned back slowly. "You lose him." "No," Junebug said. "I let him go." That made me smile slightly. "Good." Silence on the line. "You expected this," he said. "I hoped for it." Because a man who accepts exile too easily learns nothing. But a man who thinks he can outmaneuver me, that's when the real education begins. "Where is he now?" I asked. "Midtown," Junebug said. "Met with two guys outside a closed bar, didn't recognize them." I did. There's only one reason a boxer with no manager and no money meets men at midnight. He's shopping for protection. "Keep distance," I told Junebug. "Let him feel clever." I hung up. Billy thought running to Jersey Muscle would rebalance the scales. Thought maybe some downtown crew would see opportunity in backing a man who humiliated Harlem. What he didn't know. Nobody invests in bad leverage, and right now he was negative equity. Across town, Billy sat in a dim backroom with two men who wore expensive coats and cheaper morals. "I just need one fight," Billy said. "One card outside New York." One of the men leaned back. "You got heat on you." "Heat fades." "Not this kind." Billy slammed his fist on the table. "I can make money." The other man shook his head slowly. "You embarrassed a man who doesn't lose." Billy's jaw tightened. "He's just a gangster." The room went quiet at that. One of the men leaned forward. "No," he said softly, "he's infrastructure." Billy didn't understand the word the first time. He was about to learn it. Meanwhile, I made 2 calls of my own, one to the Pennsylvania Athletic Commission, one to a television producer who liked to pretend boxing was clean. By morning, rumors would circulate. Billy Brangan was unstable. Billy Brangan was difficult. Billy Brangan was bad for business. You don't have to destroy a man outright. You just make him expensive. Around 2 a.m., June Bug called again. "He's leaving Midtown," he said. "Looks agitated." "Good." "He's heading uptown." That made me pause. "Alone?" "Yeah." "Let him walk." Because if Billy was coming back to Harlem tonight, it wasn't for forgiveness. It was for revenge. And revenge without resources is just suicide. But desperate men don't calculate odds. They act. 10 minutes later, my doorman at Lenox Terrace called upstairs. "There's a big white boy pacing across the street," he said. "Looks mad." I stepped onto the balcony. Cold air, empty sidewalk. Billy stood under the streetlight staring at my building, no weapon in his hands, just wounded pride. He didn't move, didn't shout, just stared, like he was trying to will the universe back into balance. I watched him for a full minute. He couldn't see me in the shadows. He looked smaller than he had in the ring. Finally, he stepped off the curb, crossed the street, reached into his jacket. June Bug appeared from the darkness before Billy even noticed him. Blade pressed gently against Billy's throat. Not cutting, just reminding. Billy froze. "You were told to leave," June Bug said quietly. Billy swallowed. "I just want to talk." "You had your talk." He tried to look past June Bug toward the building. "Tell him I'm not done." From the balcony, I finally spoke. "You were done the moment you confused applause with loyalty." Billy's head snapped upward. He found my silhouette. "You think this is over?" He shouted. I stepped forward into the light. "No," I said calmly. "I think this is almost over." His hand twitched inside his jacket. June Bug's blade pressed harder. A thin line of red formed on Billy's neck. "Careful," June Bug murmured. "You ain't built for this game." Billy's breathing got ragged. "You can't own everything." He yelled at me. I shook my head slowly. "I don't have to." A patrol car turned the corner at the end of the block. Not coincidence. I'd called that in 15 minutes earlier. Billy saw the headlights. June Bug removed the blade and stepped back into shadow. The police cruiser slowed. Officers stepped out. "Problem here?" one asked. I rested my hands on the balcony railing. "Just a man who doesn't know when to go home," I said evenly. Billy looked from me to the officers. "You're protecting him." He barked. One officer recognized me. "No trouble tonight," he said firmly to Billy. "Move along." Billy laughed bitterly. "You're all scared of him." The officer's expression didn't change. "Move along." Billy stared at me one last time. There was hatred there now, pure, focused, not pride, not arrogance, hatred. He backed away slowly, then turned and walked into the darkness. The patrol car followed at a distance. I went back inside. June Bug joined me a minute later. "He's cracking," he said. "Yes," I replied, "but cracked men can be dangerous." I nodded. "That's why we don't relax." Because here's the truth. Humiliation breaks most men, but some men don't break. They mutate. And as I poured myself a drink and looked out at Harlem settling into the early morning quiet, I understood something clearly. Billy Brangan wasn't going to Ohio. He wasn't going quietly. And the next move he made wouldn't be about boxing. It would be about blood. By sunrise, Billy had made a decision. When a man loses his career, his money, his name, he reaches for the one thing nobody can take: revenge. He didn't go back to the motel, didn't call Jersey again, didn't try another gym. He went somewhere louder, somewhere public, somewhere cameras would be, because if he couldn't fight in a sanctioned ring, he'd build his own. Around noon, word reached me. Billy was at a rundown gym in the Bronx, not licensed, not regulated, underground smokers, cash bets, no commission oversight. He challenged anyone to step in with him. Winner takes the pot. Loser takes the hospital ride. Desperation wrapped in bravado. I sat behind my desk and listened carefully as Junebug gave the details. "He's telling people you're scared," Junebug said. "Good. He says you ruined him because you couldn't handle a little disrespect." "Even better." Junebug paused. "You want me to shut it down?" I tapped ash into a crystal tray. "No." That surprised him. "Why not?" "Because if I shut it down, he becomes a victim." Silence. "But if I let him perform," I continued, "he becomes a spectacle." Billy needed attention like oxygen, so I'd give him air, just not the kind he wanted. By late afternoon, the underground gym was packed. Word spread fast when a disgraced contender starts swinging for pride. Billy fought 3 men back to back. No ropes, no referees, just fists. He won all 3. Brutal knockouts, blood on concrete, crowd roaring. For a moment, he felt alive again. For a moment, he believed he'd found a loophole. But what he didn't know: half the money in that room belonged to me. The landlord, the lighting, even the folding chairs, infrastructure. By the 4th fight, Billy was breathing heavy, hands swelling, cuts reopening. That's when the door opened. Not police, not gunmen, inspectors, fire marshal, health department, building code enforcement, all at once. The crowd scattered like roaches under a flipped light switch. Someone yelled raid. Money disappeared. Fighters ran. The promoter slipped out a back exit. Billy stood there in the center of the chaos, chest heaving, looking confused. Who called this in? He shouted. Nobody answered, but as officers escorted people out, one of them leaned close enough for Billy to hear. Should have taken the bus. By evening, the story hit small papers. Disgraced fighter linked to illegal brawl. Not champion, not contender, disgraced. Language matters. Billy stormed out before they could detain him. No charges stuck. Not yet, but the message did. Every backroom promoter in the tri-state area got the memo without me saying a word. Hosting Billy Brangan brings attention, unwanted attention. That night, Junebug came in with a thin envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Billy sold his car this afternoon," he said. "Cash, way under value." I nodded. Liquidity phase. When pride collapses, I said, assets follow. Junebug leaned against the wall. "He ain't done." "No." Billy wasn't wired for surrender. He tasted applause. You don't detox from that easily. "Where is he now?" I asked. "Staying with some dock workers in Brooklyn. Guys who don't care about politics." I smiled faintly. Everyone cares about politics. Especially when shipments start getting delayed. That night, I made one call to a shipping supervisor at the docks. Not a threat, just a reminder of old favors. By morning, the dock workers hosting Billy were temporarily reassigned. Billy woke up to find himself alone again. No room, no crew, no plan. By the 3rd day, hunger came back stronger. He started selling watches, jewelry, anything with weight. He stopped walking like a champion, started walking like a hunted animal. But then, he did something I didn't expect. Instead of coming back to beg, he went to the press. A small downtown reporter hungry for scandal. Billy told him everything. Said Harlem was run by fear. Said I controlled commissions. Said I destroyed careers for ego. The reporter listened, took notes, promised exposure, and that's when the situation changed. Because whispers are one thing, ink is another. By evening, I had the draft of the article on my desk. Junebug looked tense. "You want him gone for real this time?" he asked. I read the headline slowly. Fighter claims Harlem crime boss fixes boxing industry. Interesting. Billy thought public accusation would corner me, force my hand, make me either retaliate violently or look guilty. Smart. Finally, he was thinking. I folded the paper carefully. No, I said. Junebug blinked. No. If he prints this, I continued calmly, he drags light into places that prefer shade. And that's bad. It's inefficient. Billy was escalating from humiliation to exposure, from pride to strategy, which meant he was evolving. And evolving enemies are more dangerous than broken ones. I stood and walked to the window. Harlem moved steady below, unbothered. Billy thought going public would save him, but public battles create witnesses. Witnesses create alliances. And alliances create new players. This wasn't just about a boxer anymore. It was about perception. And perception is power. I turned back to Junebug. Bring me the reporter, I said. Junebug's eyes narrowed slightly. Alive. For now. Because if Billy wanted to turn this into a different kind of fight, he was about to learn something new. The ring he stepped into this time didn't have corners, and I never fight alone. The reporter's name was Daniel Price, young, ambitious, hungry in the way only underpaid journalists can be. He worked for a small downtown paper trying to claw its way into relevance. He smelled scandal the way sharks smell blood, and Billy, bruised, broke, furious, had handed him a bucket. Daniel didn't know Harlem, didn't understand ecosystems. He thought this was a story about crime. It was. It was a story about control. By the time Junebug brought him in, Daniel wasn't tied up. That's important. People expect rope, duct tape, a chair under a single bulb. That's amateur theater. He sat across from me in a leather chair, holding the draft article like it was a diploma. You can't intimidate me, he said before I even spoke. I poured 2 glasses of water, not whiskey. Water calms the optics. You misunderstand, I replied. If I wanted you intimidated, you'd already be shaking. His jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. Good, spine. I'm publishing tomorrow, he continued. Billy's got recordings, dates, names. Interesting, I hadn't known about recordings. So Billy really had evolved. I leaned back. You believe him? Daniel didn't hesitate. I believe patterns. Smart answer. He slid the draft across the table as if daring me to read it. I already had. The accusations were theatrical but thin. Circumstantial connections dressed like revelations. Enough smoke to irritate, not enough to indict. But headlines don't need indictments, they need heat. Do you know who owns your paper? I asked gently. He frowned. What does that matter? It matters because ownership determines patience. He didn't respond, so I continued. Your editor answers to a board. That board answers to investors. Investors dislike instability. Daniel shifted slightly. You're threatening advertisers. No, I said calmly. I'm explaining economics. He thought I would lean in, raise my voice, show teeth. Instead, I handed him a folder. Inside were 3 documents. A quiet donation from one of my associates to his paper last quarter. A tax discrepancy in Daniel's freelance income. A photo of Billy leaving the illegal Bronx fight, blood covered with cash in hand. Your article paints Billy as a whistleblower, I said softly. But if this prints, we release that photo first. Daniel stared at it. Illegal brawl, I continued. Unlicensed gambling, possible assault. His throat tightened. You spin him as a victim. We spin him as a reckless criminal trying to deflect from his own downfall. I paused. And then regulators start asking why you published unverified claims from a man under investigation. There it was, the crossroads, not fear, calculation. Journalists don't fear threats. They fear losing credibility. He looked up. You're corrupt. Of course, I said plainly, but I'm organized. Silence stretched. Daniel closed the folder slowly. What do you want? Balance. I slid a revised headline across the table. Disgraced fighter alleges industry bias amid career collapse. Less explosive, more ambiguous. Billy becomes unstable instead of heroic. The story runs but diluted. Noise, not bomb. Daniel stared at the new headline. You want me to soften it? I want you to survive it. He understood, because this wasn't about silencing him. It was about absorbing impact. He stood after a long moment. "I'll adjust the tone," he said quietly. "Good." He paused at the door. "If Billy gets hurt because of this—" "He won't," I replied. That part was true. I had no intention of killing Billy. Dead men become martyrs. Broken men become warnings. The article ran 2 days later. It made a ripple, not a wave. Comment sections argued, boxing forums speculated. Nothing moved officially. Billy read it in a Brooklyn diner. The rage must have been nuclear. He'd gambled everything on exposure. And exposure had come back lukewarm. That's the cruelest kind of defeat. He stormed out of the diner, left half a coffee behind. By afternoon, I got the update. "He's heading uptown," Junebug said. "Alone." Yeah. That surprised me. Billy wasn't hiding anymore. He wasn't calling reporters. He wasn't fighting underground. He was coming home. When he walked into Harlem that evening, nobody cheered. Nobody booed. They just watched. And when he reached the steps of my building, he didn't pound on the door. He sat down, on the concrete, like a man who had finally run out of angles. Junebug looked at me. "You want him brought up?" I watched through the window. Billy sat there for a long time. No shouting, no threats, just breathing, waiting. And for the first time since this started, he wasn't trying to win. He was trying to understand. That made him more dangerous than ever. "Bring him up," I said, because the next conversation wouldn't be about pride or revenge. It would be about terms. And when fighters stop swinging and start negotiating, the real fight begins. Billy looked smaller when he walked into my office, not physically, but spiritually. Fighters carry an aura when they believe in themselves. It fills the room before they do. Billy entered like a man who had left something important behind and couldn't remember where. Junebug closed the door. No ropes, no theatrics, just 2 men and the wreckage between them. Billy didn't sit. "Why didn't you crush me?" he asked, straight to it. I respected that. "You weren't worth crushing," I replied evenly. His jaw flexed, but he didn't explode. Progress. "You could have had me arrested," he said. "Could have had me buried after that article." "Yes." "Why didn't you?" "Because destruction is noisy, because martyrs echo, because fear fades if it's overused." But I didn't say that. Instead, I asked him something different. "What did you want, Billy?" He hesitated. "Not money, not revenge, not even his ranking. Respect," he finally said. "There it was, the real currency. You thought you'd earn respect by embarrassing me." I asked. "I thought you'd respect someone who didn't kneel." I studied him carefully. He wasn't lying. Billy didn't hate me. He hated the idea of bending. "You don't understand something," I said. "Respect isn't rebellion, it's positioning." He frowned. "In my world," I continued, "power doesn't respect noise. It respects leverage." Billy laughed bitterly. "So what, I was supposed to kiss your ring?" "No," I said calmly. "You were supposed to recognize which battles pay." Silence. He finally sat down. That was the real shift. "You ruined my career," he said quietly. "No," I corrected. "You gambled it." His eyes lifted. "You had a path," I continued. "Title eliminator in 6 months. Sponsors lined up. A shot at something permanent." He blinked. He hadn't known. Of course he hadn't, because he'd been too busy trying to prove he wasn't afraid. "You pulled the plug," he said. "I pulled support," I replied. "There's a difference." Billy leaned forward. "So what now?" Now, that's the question men ask when they realize yesterday can't be salvaged. I opened a drawer and slid a thin contract across the desk. He didn't touch it. "Read," I said. He skimmed it, brow furrowing. "Trainer," he asked. "Yes." "For who?" "For fighters who need discipline." His head snapped up. "You want me to teach?" "I want you to rebuild." Billy stared at the contract like it insulted him. "I'm not done fighting." "You are," I said gently. That one landed because he knew it. The commission wasn't going to risk the headlines again. Promoters wouldn't touch the volatility. Sponsors already moved on. He could fight in parking lots. He could swing in basements, but professionally. That door was closed. "You'd still be in the gym," I continued. "Still shaping contenders, still respected." He shook his head slowly. That's not the same. No, I agreed. It's more durable. He stood up again, pacing once. You decontrol me, he said. I'd employ you. Same thing. I smiled faintly. Only if you let it be. He stopped pacing. You're giving me this because you pity me. That was almost funny. I'm giving you this, I said calmly, because broken fighters are unpredictable. Structured fighters are assets. There it was, honesty. He studied me for a long moment. You don't forgive, he said. No. And you don't forget. Never. Another long silence. Then he asked the only question that mattered. What happens if I say no? I didn't blink. Then you walk out of here with nothing but pride. He swallowed. Pride had cost him everything so far. He looked down at the contract again. You'd really let me train future champions. If they earn it. And if I try something. You won't. Confidence unsettles men more than threats. He exhaled slowly. Then finally. He picked up the pen, signed. The room shifted, not dramatically, but permanently. Junebug watched quietly as Billy slid the contract back across the desk. Just like that, the war ended, not with blood, with structure. Billy left the building that night not as a contender, but as a cautionary tale turned instructor. And Harlem understood the message without a speech. Defiance gets spectacle, discipline gets survival. 3 months later, one of Billy's fighters knocked out a ranked prospect in the 3rd round. The crowd chanted the young kid's name, but after the fight, cameras caught something else. Billy in the corner, calm, measured, respected. He never looked at me directly again. He didn't have to, because now he understood something he hadn't before. The ring isn't just ropes and canvas, it's systems. And the smartest fighters don't swing at the man in front of them. They learn who owns the building. Power doesn't shout, it structures. And when you finally understand that, you stop trying to win the fight. You start choosing which ones matter. 6 months passed. Billy adjusted, not happily but effectively. He showed up before dawn, wrapped hands, ran drills, corrected footwork like a man rewriting his own history. The young fighters respected him. They'd heard the stories, the underground fights, the article, the collapse. To them, he wasn't disgraced. He was dangerous. That kind of reputation is useful, and I let it breathe. The kid he was training, Marcus Hale, was fast. Southpaw, sharp instincts, no patience. Billy saw himself in him. That worried me. Keep him disciplined, I told Billy one afternoon. He listens, Billy replied, for now. Marcus won 3 fights in a row, clean, controlled. Billy never celebrated wildly, never showboated in the corner. He was learning restraint or performing it. Sometimes the difference doesn't matter, but growth invites friction. A rival promoter from Queens, Victor Lanza, started circling. Victor didn't like my influence uptown, said it made the sport predictable. Men like Victor confuse chaos with freedom. He approached Marcus quietly after a fight, bigger purse, faster track. No politics, he promised, Marcus told Billy. Billy told me. That's when I knew the structure was holding. Because 6 months ago, Billy would have handled it himself. Now he escalated it properly. Want me to warn Lanza off? Junebug asked. No, I said. We weren't going to replay old habits. This wasn't about intimidation. It was about loyalty under temptation. I called Marcus and myself. He sat across from me, younger version of every fighter who thinks time is infinite. You thinking about Queens? I asked calmly. He hesitated. Bigger fights, he said. Bigger risks, I replied. He didn't argue, smart kid. You know what happened to Billy, I continued. His eyes flicked briefly toward the gym floor. Yeah. Talent isn't rare, I said. Stability is. Silence. Lanza will rush you, I went on. You'll get a spotlight before you're ready. 1 loss under bright lights is louder than 3 wins in the dark. Marcus absorbed that. Billy stood in the doorway, not interfering, not pleading, just watching, growth. Finally, Marcus spoke. I stay. Simple, clean, choice made without pressure. That mattered. Victor Lanza didn't take it personally. He took it competitively. Within weeks, rumors started again. Whispers about favoritism, about matchmaking bias, about Harlem being closed. Different voice, same melody Billy once sang. This time, though, Billy didn't react, didn't storm anywhere, didn't chase reporters. He kept training. That's when I knew he'd truly changed. Because power isn't proven by counterattacking every slight. It's proven by not flinching. Then came the test. Marcus got scheduled for a televised undercard. Big enough to matter, small enough to manage. 2 days before weigh-in, an anonymous tip hit the commission. Allegation, illegal gym activity, unlicensed sparring wagers, old ghosts. Same playbook used against Billy. Only this time it wasn't us being accused, it was Billy personally. They wanted him suspended from the corner. I watched Billy read the notice. His face didn't flare, didn't crack, just tightened slightly. "They're baiting you," I said. "I know." "What do you want to do?" That question wasn't rhetorical. This time he had leverage. He thought for a long moment. "Nothing," he said. Junebug looked surprised. Billy continued. "If I react, it feeds it. If I fight it loud, it grows legs." He folded the notice calmly. "I'll step back from the corner for this one." That was the moment. 6 months ago, he would have burned the building down. Now he was sacrificing spotlight for longevity. Marcus fought without Billy physically in the corner, but Billy trained him all camp, prepared him, built him. Marcus won by unanimous decision on live television. After the fight, cameras searched for drama. There wasn't any. Billy waited backstage, quiet. When Marcus found him, he didn't shout. He hugged him, short, firm, earned. Later that night, Junebug leaned against my office wall. "You trust him now?" he asked. I looked out over Harlem. "I trust the structure." Billy had tried to fight power once, tried to expose it, tried to outmuscle it. Now he understood something deeper. Systems don't fall because you punch them. They shift when you learn how to stand inside them. A week later, the anonymous complaint vanished. No evidence, no follow-up. Victor Lanza moved on to easier targets, and Billy stopped being a cautionary tale. He became proof that pride can destroy a man and discipline can rebuild him. One evening, as the gym closed, Billy approached my office door. He didn't knock, just stood there. "Yeah," I said. He met my eyes directly for the first time in months. "You could have ended me," he said quietly. "I know." "Why didn't you?" I studied him carefully because this answer mattered. "Because broken men are loud," I said. "Rebuilt men are useful." He nodded once. No resentment left, just understanding. And that's when I realized something unexpected. Billy wasn't dangerous anymore, not because he'd lost power, but because he'd found control, and men who control themselves don't need to swing at shadows. The gym lights shut off one by one. Harlem stayed steady outside. Fights would always exist. Rivals would always circle. Egos would always flare, but the structure, it endured, because power doesn't survive by crushing everything. It survives by deciding what's worth rebuilding. And this time, I chose correctly. A year changes the way people remember. Billy Brangan went from headline to rumor to footnote. That's how survival works. The world doesn't forgive you, it replaces you. Marcus Hale kept winning, not spectacular knockouts anymore, smart fights. 8 rounds, 10 rounds, learning distance, learning patience. Billy turned him into something durable. That word again, durable. I started hearing a new phrase around the gyms. Harlem builds long careers. That was better than fear. Fear creates obedience. Reputation creates gravity. Then something unexpected happened. Marcus lost. It wasn't dramatic. No knockout, no robbery, just a close split decision on a bigger stage. Bright lights, louder crowd, neutral territory, Victor Lanza's territory. The commentary team questioned Marcus' composure, said he lacked killer instinct. Old whispers repackaged. Billy didn't argue with judges, didn't rant to reporters. He said one sentence: "We'll adjust." That was it. No spectacle, no ego, just correction. I watched him in the locker room afterward. Marcus was furious, punching lockers, swearing about politics. Billy grabbed his gloves and tossed them in the bag. "You lost because you hesitated in the 6th, Billy said calmly. Marcus snapped back. "The ref was biased." Billy stepped closer. No, you were uncertain. Silence, and then something rare happened. Marcus listened because Billy wasn't speaking from theory, he was speaking from scar tissue. 2 weeks later, Victor Lanza requested a meeting. Not hostile, not aggressive, professional. He came uptown himself. That told me everything. He sat in my office and didn't posture. I underestimated your rebuild, he said plainly. I don't rebuild, I replied. I reorganize. He smirked slightly. I want a co-promotion on the rematch. There it was, not war, alignment. Because Marcus, loss had created intrigue. And intrigue sells. Fair split, Victor added. Control of venue, I asked. Neutral. He wasn't trying to dominate, he was trying to participate. That's what systems do when they realize resistance is expensive. They integrate. I extended my hand. Done. When Billy heard about the rematch deal, he didn't celebrate. He asked one question. Are we ready? That's when I knew he'd fully crossed over. He wasn't chasing redemption. He was evaluating probability. Get him sharper in the middle rounds, I said. Billy nodded, already thinking. Fight night felt different, not tense, charged. The first bout had been about proving something. The rematch was about precision. Marcus fought smarter, slower early, controlled exchanges, targeted the body in the 5th and 6th. In the 8th, the hesitation that cost him before. Gone, he committed, clean right hook. Knockdown, the crowd shifted, not chaos, momentum. Marcus won by unanimous decision. Clear, undeniable. After the fight, cameras swarmed. They asked Marcus about revenge. He said, it wasn't revenge, it was correction. Billy stood behind him, calm as ever. Victor Lanza shook my hand without resentment. The ecosystem had stabilized. Later that night, Billy and I stood alone in the empty gym. You ever regret it? He asked. Regret what? The way you handled me. I considered that. Regret is emotional, strategy is. No, I said honestly. He nodded. I don't regret it either. That surprised me, he continued. If you'd crushed me, I'd still be fighting ghosts. He looked around the gym floor. Now I'm building something that lasts longer than I would have. That was the final transformation. Billy no longer saw me as an enemy. He saw me as a force he had collided with and survived. Survival changes the narrative. Years later, people wouldn't remember the underground fights. They wouldn't remember the article. They wouldn't remember the standoff on my steps. They would remember this. Marcus Hale's trainer, that's how legacy rewrites itself. Not by erasing the past, by outgrowing it. As for me, Harlem remained steady, promoters adjusted, fighters learned, and the lesson spread quietly. Power isn't about ending opponents. It's about deciding which ones are worth converting. Billy once tried to fight the structure. Now he reinforced it. And that's the quiet secret nobody writes headlines about. The strongest systems don't destroy resistance. They absorb it, and when done correctly, the resistance becomes the foundation. Time did what it always does. It softened the edges. 5 years later, Marcus Hale wasn't a prospect anymore. He was champion, not the loudest, not the flashiest, but the most consistent man in his division. Broadcasters called him surgical. Analysts said he never wastes motion. They never mentioned the years Billy wasted, but Billy remembered, and that's why Marcus never did. The night Marcus won the title, the arena lights burned hotter than usual. The belt changed hands in the 11th round, body work breaking down a reckless champion who thought aggression was dominance. It was impatience. Marcus didn't celebrate wildly. He raised the belt, found Billy in the corner, and nodded. That nod carried 5 years of discipline, 5 years of restraint, 5 years of learning that pride without structure is self-sabotage. Back in Harlem, the gym expanded. More fighters, more sponsors, cleaner walls, same foundation. Billy's name hung discreetly near the entrance now. Not flashy, not oversized, just acknowledged. People started bringing their sons to him. Teach him the right way, they'd say. Billy always answered the same way. We build slow. One afternoon, long after the cameras left and the belt tour ended, Billy came to my office again. Older now, calmer in his bones. You planning on retiring? He asked me. From what? I replied. He smiled faintly. Running everything. I looked out the window at Harlem. It wasn't the same as it had been years ago. New buildings, new money, new noise, but the system still held. Systems don't retire, I said. They evolve. He nodded like he expected that. You ever think about what would have happened if I'd won? He asked. You didn't lose, I replied. He considered that. I tried to burn it down. And now I protect it. That wasn't submission. That was ownership. A few months later, something happened that tested everything. A young fighter in the gym, hot-headed, talented, refused a promotional agreement. Said it smelled like control. Said he wouldn't be owned. The words sounded familiar. Billy didn't react emotionally. He asked the kid to sit, listened, let him vent. Then he said something I hadn't heard before. You think you're fighting them, Billy said calmly, but you're really fighting time. The kid frowned. Billy continued. You can fight the system, or you can learn it faster than it learns you. No threats, no pressure, just clarity. The kid signed 2 weeks later because Billy didn't preach fear, he embodied consequence. Years passed. Marcus defended his title 4 times, lost it once, won it back, retired with money intact and health mostly preserved. Rare, very rare. At his retirement speech, Marcus thanked a lot of people, sponsors, family, fans. Then he said something unexpected. I want to thank the men who taught me that ego is expensive. He didn't say my name. He didn't say Billy's directly either, but he looked at us both. And that was enough. Billy eventually opened a second gym downtown, not under my direct oversight. That was intentional. Growth requires distance. Before he signed the lease, he came to see me one last time. Permission. He asked lightly. Advice, I corrected. He waited. Build it better than this one, I said. He smiled. I will. And he did. The last time we spoke privately, he asked me something that lingered. Do you ever worry it collapses? All systems collapse eventually, I said. That doesn't bother you. No. He looked confused. Why not? Because collapse only happens when people stop maintaining it. He understood. Because maintenance isn't loud, it's daily, repetitive, uncelebrated, just like training, just like discipline. Just like rebuilding a broken fighter into a teacher. If you walk through Harlem now, you won't hear my name shouted. You won't see fear in the gyms. You'll see structure, schedules, contracts. Young fighters drilling fundamentals while older ones correct posture. You'll see Billy Brangan moving through the room with quiet authority, not as a cautionary tale, not as a fallen contender, but as a pillar. And that's the final lesson. Power that destroys is temporary. Power that reorganizes endures. Billy once tried to win the fight. Now he wins the future, and me, I never needed applause, because the strongest proof of control is when the system runs smoothly without you having to raise your voice.